In today's video, we'll go over quantitative versus qualitative research. We'll see what they are, the differences between them, and when to use each. To begin, let's take a look at qualitative research. So, qualitative research consists of collecting data through open questions, so that we get an understanding of different people's point of view. And, most importantly, we do not intend to do calculations based on the answers we get. Or we might do some, but we know that the numbers aren't really representative of our target population. They're not solid enough to draw conclusions to optimize anything based on them. The point is to gather broad knowledge. Typically, qualitative research is done using questionnaires with open questions, and we allow respondents to answer whatever they like. For example, a typical question in a qualitative market research study for a new product might be, what do you consider to be this product's main positive aspects? We use these questions because at an early stage of research, we may not yet have a good knowledge about the market and we have no idea of what people may answer. Or we think that we have an idea, but we want to make sure, because if we're used to doing market research, we know that there will be surprises and we don't want post-launch surprises. In this case, it's a good idea to have a broad conversation with a handful of people to get a general idea of what people like, so that we can generate some hypotheses regarding the product's main selling points. But a key thing to have in mind here is that our goal with this question would be just to get an idea of what people like. We're not trying to understand what percentage of our market likes which features best. So, with qualitative research, the point is to expand on general knowledge. And that's why this type of research is usually conducted through interviews, focus groups, advisory boards, mock negotiations, or any other sorts of means that allows us to have open interactions with respondents that may even sometimes be tailored as the conversation moves along. Unfortunately, having these types of broad discussions is very time-consuming. You need to spend time conducting the interviews or preparing and moderating the group discussions, and the data obtained can be all over the place, even if you have a pre-designed discussion guide. That makes analyzing these results very time-consuming. On top of that, the interviewer must have enough depth of knowledge on the topic to be able to steer the discussion to obtain the most relevant information possible from each respondent. The interviewer must make sure that the results obtained make sense and can be acted upon, or the research will be pointless. If the outcome of our research is that people want flying cars, well, your interviewer didn't do a great job. What are you supposed to do with that? Anyway, due to all of this, qualitative interviews or other qualitative research methods can't be used in large numbers. While they allow to collect very granular data and they allow for an expansion of gathered information outside your initial scope of knowledge, sometimes you don't know what you don't know until an interviewee brings it up. The format of research does not allow to scale the number of answers. It would be too time-consuming and expensive. So, this type of research does not allow us to talk about averages, means, percentages, and all the numbers that we typically like to use when describing a market for a product. And that's where quantitative research comes in. In quantitative research, you get information from a large number of participants, which allows you to have a respondent sample that is large enough to be representative of your target market. That is, whatever is going on in this sample is likely to be going on in your market as a whole. Anyway, just as in the case of qualitative research, quantitative research can come in several different formats. But for market research purposes, we're generally talking about surveys or behavior observation. I'll assume we're talking about surveys here. In this case, since we need data from a large amount of participants and surveys are boring to fill in, the research materials need to be a lot simpler for whoever is taking the survey, not for the researcher, of course. For the researcher, quantities are usually a lot tougher to put together. And that is because while you can keep an interviewee engaged in a discussion for well over an hour, and advisory boards can last an entire day or even several days and still keep people engaged all the way through, If you send people a survey that takes 1 hour to complete, the data after a certain point may not be the best quality because people are completely fed up. And I'd assume that people who answer are all being paid to do so. Also, people taking surveys should be able to understand everything that's presented to them and answer the questions by themselves, although there are exceptions. So, simplicity is a must. Anyway, in the case of quantitative market research, not only the questions are predefined, but for ease of analysis, the answers are usually predefined also. Usually, respondents are asked to select among options, rank stuff, score stuff, distribute points, provide a number, etc. That makes it possible to analyze a high volume of data without the need to spend hours and hours reading through answers. So, although the answers to a quantitative study can be qualitative, for ease of analysis, they are usually predetermined so that they can each be represented by a number or a letter. As an example, while for a qualitative study, we might ask, what 3 things do you like the most about this product? And leave it at that. For a quantitative study, we might ask, what 3 things do you like the most about this product? A, ease of use, B, design, C, price-quality relationship, D, whatever makes sense, etc., etc. While you may notice that the several options are qualitative answers, if we analyze the percentage of people selecting options A, B, C, etc., we are doing a quantitative analysis of qualitative data. And this is important to understand. What makes a quantitative research quantitative and a qualitative research qualitative isn't that one has quantitative data and the other one has qualitative data. Quantitative market research studies can have qualitative questions and qualitative ones can have quantitative questions. The difference is that for a quantitative analysis, we need a high volume of data so that we can consider that the data is representative of a target population. And generating that high volume of answers is what leads us to having constraints regarding the way in which we can ask things, since we must be able to analyze a lot of responses, making it impossible to read through text answers in a cost-effective way. This leads us to an added difficulty with quantitative studies, which is that to define upfront what options you will give respondents, you must already have a solid expectation regarding likely answers. Otherwise, you'd have a bunch of other please explain answers if you give respondents that option, and a lot of work to do. Or worse, people just pick whatever so they don't have to type and your data is total garbage. So, at the end of the day, quantitative research is usually best suited to quantify things that you either already know or suspect that are going on. Now, could you add a couple of qualitative open questions to a quantitative research? Of course. However, you would need to code the answers afterward. That is, you would have to categorize the answers into buckets of similar answers if you want to do any sort of quantitative analysis based on them. Like, for example, what percentage of the population gave an answer that falls into a given category. And that's a major headache. You have no idea until you try it. Sounds simple, but coding answers after getting the answers really is just a nightmare. So, to sum up, quantitative research versus qualitative research sometimes isn't a matter of either or, but a matter of where we stand in the process of understanding the market. Qualitative market research is good to gain knowledge, but not suitable to measure and optimize, while quantitative market research is good to measure something that you already know or suspect is there, but you don't know the extent to which is there and you want to measure it. So, it is likely that you'll need to do both at some point. When it comes to product development, the one to go for to test your idea would clearly be qualitative market. However, if what you want is to optimize your price, you should bet on a quanti. The key takeaway is that both qualitative and quantitative market research are great tools, but they serve different purposes. So you need to choose the one that suits your particular purpose best. And that's it for today. I hope it was helpful and see you in the next one. Bye!